Welcome to the Stronger Than Steel podcast with your host, Austin Davidson and John Keir, talking Steelers all the time. Now, here's Austin and John.
Hello and welcome back to a special edition of the Stronger Than Steel podcast. My name is John Keir, and I have a few people joining me today. I, of course, have Austin Davidson, my usual co-host, but I also have a couple of guests on the show today that we've had on the show in the past. First and foremost, my roommate, Will Lester. How you doing, Will?
Hey, good to be here.
A Lions fan, and of course, I have Jesse Cardinal, who was on last year to talk about the Saints. How you doing, Jesse?
Doing good, thank you, John.
So we're talking today about officiating in the NFL, and with the Steelers bye week having gone and passed, I figured that we'd have a little time to talk about just what's going on in the league. And officiating has probably been the top conversation starter when it comes to the NFL's 100th season, and it goes back to the 99th season, which, with of course, as Jesse can state better than any of us. Certainly questionable and controversial call in the NFC Championship game that influenced what was ultimately the Rams advancing to Super Bowl 53 instead of the New Orleans Saints. And now, just over a week ago, bookending that Saints game with a couple questionable calls in the Lions-Packers Monday night game that have people questioning. I mean, there's stuff going on every week, but those two particular games and moments have had people questioning the league's officials and just the whole process and the state of where we are with the NFL and officiating. So I guess first and foremost, we wanted to talk about what is going on, like what is the state of everything, why, like what is wrong, why is it wrong, and then we can kind of transition into how can things get better. So who wants to start here? Just kind of your thoughts on officiating this year and in general. You want to start, Will?
Sure. Well, I think this year's problems really stem from that Saints call in the NFC Championship game. Mm-hmm. I think if they make that call as they should have, I don't think pass interference is such an issue, as much of an issue this year as it has been, and because of all this bad air around this PI nonsense with the reviewing it, which I'm sure we'll get into, it has left everything in the spotlight and has left the referees in a poor position to get it right, not just with pass interference, but in other calls in general. So I think that's where it starts, and then you can get into the whole, who's refereeing what game, and does the sky judge change anything? Do we need to change the rules? Do we need to change the way we officiate games? I think it really starts with this pass interference rule, the NFL not getting it right from the get-go about what they should do about that rule. And I'm sure Jesse, he would hate to see the rule. He hates the rule now because it does his team no good. But I don't know if he agrees with the change in the rule and or the way that they look at the rule in the game for reviewing.
Well, I think that there's two different problems with the officiating in terms of a broad sense. I think there's a problem with the rules, whether it's making new rules like the pass interference call, and then there's the way that the game is actually officiated using the changed rules. And I think, the discrepancy in how a game is officiated, the inconsistency, in other words, is a problem. But I also think that, the rule, yes, it doesn't do us any good now, except slowing up the game and it's putting the refs more in a spotlight than it is players.
And I really think you said the right word there with inconsistency. I think that's the big problem right now. Is I don't have so much the problem with the idea that pass interference is reviewable. It's that what is and isn't pass interference changes with each referee, with each game, so it leaves an inconsistency. So some calls there are some things you can consider a call and some things you can't, and the NFL has refused to overturn these challenges unless it's as clear and blatant and obvious, like the Saints non-call in the NFC Championship game. And I think that's really what's fueled this fire under the pass interference in the NFL, is the inconsistency and the gravity of what they consider to be changeable on the field, or to just go with what the call is that they made initially.
And furthermore, the inconsistency, I think it really starts at the top, and it's not just pass interference, and it's definitely applicable there, but it's calls everywhere. And Austin, you definitely will remember the Ola Adeni roughing the passer call on Lamar Jackson a couple weeks ago. It's not just pass interference. It's roughing the passer. It's defensive holding. It's illegal hands to the face. It's different for for each crew. It seems to be different, and some crews call more penalties than others, and that's going to happen. But I think the problem that seems to arise is that seems to be a lack of consistency everywhere, but where does that start? And I have to think that it starts at the top. Is it maybe the rules being too complex and complicated, or is it just too much of a laissez-faire kind of attitude with Al Riveron and Roger Goodell trickling down? I mean, I don't know. Austin, do you think that it's something like that?
I do. I've been over it quite a few times now, but I think Al Riveron is probably the source of this problem. Every day you got to get your employees ready for work, on the same page, doing the same thing. Any job you go to, everyone has a plan. Everyone's got to be on the same page, do what they're supposed to do. What it feels like is that every crew, as you guys said, is doing their own thing. There's inconsistencies everywhere. There's calls that are weird, like you saw one against Terrell Edmonds, a pass interference against him, and then we saw more rough in like another game later in the year. Like it's just different crews make different calls, and to me, it's looking bad on Al Riveron. He's not getting his crews on the same page. He's not sitting them down and saying, guys, look at this. This is what we call a pass interference. This is what's a roughing the passer. This is what any other penalty is supposed to look like. He's just basically, I think he's just letting head refs just make their final call on what they think it should be, and that's not how you manage employees. At the end of the day, he's the top guy. He's supposed to be controlling all these other guys. The head refs are obviously the ones that make the calls, but I just think that it starts with Al Riveron, and this is where all the problems come from. I think that he needs to get his employees under the same, with thinking the same way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it definitely seems to be starting at least from the top, but there are problems on every level. And I had mentioned to you previously, I'm not even sure that if Riveron does get fired that things are going to change. I feel like almost Riveron could end up getting fired, but it would almost be like a scapegoating sort of thing where things don't really change. Case in point, this is a little different, kind of apples to oranges, but last year the NFL fired an official for the first time in I think the modern era because he missed a false start call against the Browns in a Chargers-Browns game last season. His name was Hugo Cruz, and I don't remember exactly what happened, but I know that the union was going to try to challenge that firing. It felt like Cruz was used as like a scapegoat, and we were just talking before we started recording, Will, about how these changes are being made almost in terms of like a reactionary public appearance kind of move, and it's not really changing anything. It's just, oh, we did something. Here you go. Now we can go back to doing what we were doing. There's not real change being made.
And that's the only consistent thing that the NFL does do, is when they make a move like this, it's a cover their tail move. That firing of the official from that game, the rule to affect the pass interference because of the Saints game. When they send these guys, they put, Al Riveron or whoever will say after a game, oh, this should have been called, this shouldn't have been, whatever. Everything is a reactionary cover your tail move to say that you did or said something to do anything about it. But in reality, it's not getting better because there is no accountability. There's nothing that makes these refs get the calls right. There's nothing to hold the NFL accountable for getting things wrong like this. And I think that's why when we talk about is it Al Riveron or it's the rules, I think it's a little bit of both. Austin's 100% right. Riveron's not sitting his guys down and saying, this is what is, this is what's not. This is what's right, this is what's wrong. Every crew has got their own interpretation of what one particular call is, and it seems like it changes, and then when it comes back to the rules, they may seem simple and straightforward, but they're complex and intricate enough that everyone's interpretation of what the rule says is different, and Al Riveron is not doing his job of defining what it means, what it says, what it is, and that's part of the problem.
You had talked about a lack of accountability, and I think that's a big thing that we've seen in the most recent weeks where officials have been criticized, and officials have been getting criticized for a long time. But we've seen recently that players and coaches have been fined. Specifically last week, there were 3, or 2 weeks ago now, it was last week, 3 players that were fined various amounts for criticizing the officials. Tracy Walker, the Lions safety, was fined $12,500 for criticizing officials. Baker Mayfield was also fined for his post-game press conference comments on officiating. And Rams linebacker Clay Matthews was fined for tweets in regards to the officials. So the biggest problem, not the biggest problem, but another problem seems to be that officials are getting criticized, and it seems to be fair criticism, but the NFL is doing their best to make players and coaches not want to do this. They're trying to condemn these actions, even though they are warranted, in my opinion anyways. So I was doing a little research, and from what I understand, now I haven't been able to confirm this, there doesn't seem to be much information on it. I don't know if any of you guys have seen it, but it seems like officials, only the head official can be interviewed after the game, and it's by one person, and I think it's one of the local beat writers or something, or maybe it's just an NFL beat writer, which is kind of interesting, because if that is the case, you have an NFL employee interviewing another NFL employee, and it's in a closed setting. So what is that telling you? It keeps leading back to the NFL will put out what they want, which is why you don't hear from these officials, and you only hear from the league and Riveron. So I mean, I don't know who wants to kind of respond to that, but it really feels like there's clearly a lack of accountability, and the NFL doesn't seem interested in changing that.
So what I was thinking here, right, is that the biggest thing that bothers me now is that players are still getting fined for those things. Like, there's not only is there no accountability isn't allowed. There's no dissent allowed in the NFL. The NFL's got its own little set of politics here. That it's like you said, you mentioned that the players get fined, and then they also have the referees can get interviewed by another NFL employee, meaning they're both on the same page that if it's detrimental to the NFL and their image, they're not going to put it out. And that's what's happening. And the NFL is restricting this on their own. Now, this is on an even higher level than Riveron. This is on Roger Goodell level, that he's not allowing the NFL to be transparent like that. And this accountability is just not being put out there by the NFL. It's like I'm just going to call it like an inside job here, because they're doing it to themselves. They're literally stopping themselves from holding the refs accountable. I don't really understand what the idea is behind that, because I feel like if they just changed that, if he just allowed the refs to take the fall for this, it wouldn't fix things, but it'd make people feel a little bit better if the refs were held a little bit accountable. But I don't know, maybe it's like in the ref CBA that they aren't supposed to be put in the firing line or something like that. I have no clue. I know they just agreed to a new CBA, but it just seems so weird that the NFL literally allows them to not be held accountable at all.
I think I feel like the NFL, at least this is just speculation on my end, I feel like it's just they don't want to open the Pandora's box thing. I think that I think, Jesse, you can agree or disagree with me, but I feel like they saw the Nickel Roby-Coleman on Tommy Lee Lewis play. I think they saw that as an aberration. Like, oh, it's just very unlucky that this happened. This is never going to happen again. And I feel like they almost see things as things are fine, we're still making a ton of money, and they probably see it as we're still making money, why do we feel like we have to change? Even though from the outside, you can say, you don't have to say, yeah, we're making money. There are ways that you can make things better. You can make your product better. But I think the owners, Goodell, Riveron, the league, just doesn't seem interested in making it better because they are still making money. Do you agree with me, Jesse? I was going to say...
Yeah, no, I think the Nickel Roby-Coleman play is different in itself, because I don't think that a lot of the plays that people are complaining about or have an issue with are usually 50-50, but on that particular play, I don't think there's anyone in the world that will not say that is pass interference.
Maybe 99.
That one was pretty obvious.
Mm-hmm.
But if players are getting fined for officiating or complaining about officiating, could officials get fined for making game calls?
I think they can be, but I don't know if that's made public or not.
I've never heard or seen anything that Outside of that article from last year, I haven't seen or heard anything of any kind of punishment being relegated to an official for a poor or missed call.
Well, and I think a lot of that too is again via the rule and the discretion that each official is given. I know in terms of the Saints that earlier this year they had the Saints are 13-1 when officiated by a Carl Chepper's crew. And I'm guessing that there are numbers that are probably there's a 2-12 or there's a 6-7. There's different crews like that, and so when you have such an advantage at it's effectively a 12th man, 13th man, 14th man that you have when officials are on your side in a ratio of 13-1. So I'm not sure if the NFL wants to. I'm not sure if it's the NFL ignoring that they want to get better so much as maybe not knowing how to do so.
And I guess that kind of segues into kind of our next thing, because we've kind of identified that there's problems on pretty much every level, but it seems to start at the top. So there are two different conversations to have. One is, I think, shorter than the other, and that is, what will the NFL do? Because I have to think at some point here it's all going to come to a head and the NFL is going to do something. Now, I personally think, starting to kind of agree with what Austin seemed to have been thinking before, is that Riveron or someone is going to end up taking the fall for this, and not a whole lot is going to change. But I think the necessary change, and we can get to that in a minute, is not going to happen. But for now, at least, I think someone is going to end up getting the finger pointed at them. Kind of like how Hugo Cruz was the official fired last year, and no one remembers that now. But at the time, it was all like, okay, let's make him the problem, and then everything will wash away, which obviously that hasn't happened. I feel like that's the way things are going to go for the NFL.
The problem with the NFL, I think, and why I don't think you're going to see anything happen this year that's going to be reasonable change to help anything, is that money talks, right? I mean, we just mentioned it before. They're going to lean on the side of the way that makes them money. And so what we see week in and week out, and even from just last Monday's game, we're talking about it, but on a national scale, they're done talking about it. There's nothing left to be said.
That's last week's news.
And these players, they're getting fined all this money. These refs get fined nothing. They work so hard to keep these players quiet when it comes to particular issues within the NFL, because I think it comes down to the NFL just wants to say, hey, this is a problem that might cost us money. We need to make this, die. We need to make this disappear and fast, because it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt our viewers. It's going to hurt our sponsors. All this nonsense that goes into the NFL, it's become such a money-driven league that when you got players like Clay Matthews or Baker Mayfield speaking out on social media, speaking out in their press conferences, they don't want any of that. That's a bad light on the NFL. They need to just slap the fine, and they want to send this message to the players, hey, we can't talk about our league and the people that work within the league like this, because this kind of thing costs us money. So they make this disappear. They come out after a game like last Monday night, and they have an empty statement that says, well, we got this wrong. There's nothing that happens to the official. You don't see anything other than fines on players for speaking out. And all these teams have to turn around and say, well, we have to focus on the next game. There's nothing we can do about it now. Yeah. And that's the sad reality of it. And that's why I don't think we're going to see anything happen this year outside of best case scenario. You may see a Riveron firing, but other than that, you probably won't see anything until after the year when everyone says, what can we do to fix this? Or something as bad as the Saints and the Rams game happen. That's the sad reality of this league. Is it's a money-driven league. It's not a make the fans happy kind of league all the time.
What I think is actually going to happen, because you made me think of it, instead of doing nothing, I think what they're going to do after this year is say that, look, it was a colossal failure to this is what they're going to do. They're going to address a problem that almost didn't exist. They're going to take away the pass interference review thing, because they're like, look, it didn't work. It didn't work, guys. We told you. We tried it. It didn't work. Because I think, like, in the past, like, since week 3, it's like 0 for 16 on coaches' challenges on what's a pass interference or not, something like that, a stat close to that. And that's going to be, like, their only change they do. That's going to be the one change they do to officiating. It's not going to be firings or anything like that, probably. Maybe one guy, like John just said, but I think that's all they're going to do. They're just going to be like, oh, well, we tried. We couldn't fix it. So back to what we had. And that's all that's going to happen here.
Place it on something that was outside of their control. Something stupid like that.
Yeah, Jesse and I were just talking before we actually started here, and that was exactly what I was saying to him, is that like the NFL is gonna they hate it when the fans try to like push things on the NFL, because it's the high and mighty NFL. You know, we can do what we want, and we're bigger than Jesus on Sundays, you know?
Control the narrative.
Exactly. They want to do things the way they want to, and they hate that this whole Nickel Roby-Coleman, Tommy Lee Lewis thing forced their hand, because the fans are like, this is completely unacceptable, and it is. Mm-hmm. And they, you know, the whole like pass interference review thing was pushed, and the NFL was like, all right, I guess we're going to have to do this, but we're going to do this our way. And that's what you said. You know, Will found the statistic, Austin. It's 4 for 38 in total, and I think, like you said, since week 4, it's like maybe one.
There's been
something.
one conversion since week 3, I believe, and in total, 4 of 38 pass interference challenges have been converted.
And so here we are again talking about, you know, at the end of the year, the NFL is going to say, oh, we did what you guys wanted and it didn't work, even though it's all on them for the fact that it didn't work. And now we're going to be right back to where we were 2 years ago, or last year. In this case, it'll be 2 years ago, where we could have another play like a Nickel Roby-Coleman on Tommy Lee Lewis again. And again, it's not likely to happen in that big of a case, but it can. And I think that's the issue, is that we could end up right back where we were in the matter of just 2 years. And it's just because the NFL just, I don't know. I mean, is that how that's how I see things going? It seems to be how we all seem to think things are going to be going.
Yeah, in a sense. And players, of course, are they're still going to get fined after this year for speaking out against this league or their officials or anything like that. And, of course, the NFL will chalk it up as well. All this money goes to charity. It doesn't help us at all. But at the end of the day, they want players to keep their mouths shut about things that are wrong with the NFL. You know, we see guys go on television or radio or whatnot and complain about players not doing their job, and the minute they do that against the NFL, it's a huge issue, and I know it upsets a lot of people. I know, myself personally, that the players have no voice in this at all, because they're the ones that are really getting affected, and of course, it's their pocketbooks that they're touching when they dog something like this, and they're not going to do anything about that, but they'll probably change the pass interference rule, and they'll change a couple other rules. But I think part of the problem with that too is that they're not going to change it to get it right. They're going to change it, make it more complex, and we're still going to see this inconsistency with referees interpreting it differently. So,
what do you guys think is the actual solution, though? Like, instead of just saying that there's a bunch of problems, what's the actual solution? Is it getting all the officials in one room and saying, okay, this is pass interference, this isn't, we're going to let them play, we're not going to let them play, we're going to call roughing the passer just below the knee, but if we're not sure, we're not going to call it, or if we are sure? Like, what is the actual solution? Does everybody sit down in a room, or do officials get fined? Do officials get fired? Does Al Riveron get fired, and then a new guy comes in with radical changes? Like, what's an actual solution that could be put in place that we think that could increase the consistency and have better rules?
Well, I don't think it's a simple. It's not simple. There's a lot of things you can do.
It can definitely start there, where you get all parties in a room, and you need to come to an agreement on what is the right thing to do. And I think part of it is you need to get players, coaches, refs, league officials. You need to get everyone in a room and say, look, this is what's wrong with our league. We need to do something about this. You need to fix the way the officiating is done, because it's not right. If you need to change the rule book's wording, if you need to change the complexities and or the rules itself, don't just sit in an owner's meeting or sit in a league meeting, make changes, and then have to have coaches, players, owners come out and complain about it or sue the league like the Saints did to have to get a change for them to just cover their ass and do something. They need to sit down and confer on the right possible solution, because obviously everyone's going to have their own solution that may work, but they need to get everyone together and get it right between the groups of them.
You have something you want to say, Austin?
Oh, what I was thinking here is I wanted to agree with you. It's a complex problem, because this isn't something I think we can fix in a year, because we need to find out what's the biggest problem here. Is the biggest problem Al Riveron? Is the biggest problem these refs are being babied? Is the biggest problem somewhere in between? Is it the way the rules are written, as Will just went over? It's just, there's so much complexity to it, and I think you got to start just trying to weed it out and figure out what it is. You go year by year, testing different things. Is the rules a little bit too complicated? Is the way it's worded too complicated? Is egregious not well defined? Is certain things not well defined? And you define them. You start with the rules first, I think, and you make sure everything's well defined once you got the solid rule, because I feel like the rules aren't even solid. I don't know what an egregious hit is anymore. I don't know what egregious forcing a opponent out of the catch. I don't know. I don't know what this stuff is. I feel like I don't know when it goes into like a pass interference call. So I think you start with the rules. If it continues being bad after that, you look at Al Riveron. You look at, are these people being managed properly? Actually, I'm sorry. I would do it reverse. I would look at the refs. Refs first. Are they doing their job properly? Are they well maintained? Are they going in with the same mindset? Is there bias? Is there all this stuff? And you work from there. And then if you decide that, I think you need to get new refs. I don't know. I don't think that's a little bit hype. It's a little bit of an exaggeration because you can't just fire these guys. They all are in a union, but you got to find a middle ground here where you could get something in. And I love your idea. Well, it's not exactly your idea, but the AAF Sky Judge that you've mentioned several times was fantastic for fixing bad ref calls for that. I love adding an additional ref that helps with that can see overhead, that can look at this. And something else from the AAF that I do like, I like that during reviews you get to hear from the people making the calls. For those who didn't watch the AAF, whenever there was a controversial call that was challenged, you got to hear into what the ref, that I think it was just called the head ref, or what he was looking at, what he was talking through it. He was like, I see this is what's happening. It gives transparency. And I think those two things, stealing from the AAF's, their short-lived time that several people enjoyed, would be a good idea to start fixing this. And then lastly, if all of this is still not working out, to look at Al Riveron. I think that would be, I guess, probably the last thing. I think you could reverse whether you look at the refs or Riveron first, but regardless, I think that this is gonna be a multi-year process to fix, and I'm sure there'll be more snags along the way. As the refs have been a problem for, it feels like 5 years now. It was like the catch rule 2 years ago. Now we're at pass interference. Before that, it was did he catch it, like with Des Bryant like 5 years ago. Like, there's just every few years there's something new that the refs just mess up and make complicated for no reason. And the sad thing about it is I've already been seeing reports that the NFL is not interested in a Sky Judge. So we'd be, that's, and not that the Sky Judge would fix everything, mind you, of course, but, it's just, it feels as though the NFL is just, again, we're circling back here. This is all stuff that we've just been talking about here, is like things that can be done, but we all know that this is just going to be an issue that's just, it's going to be, I don't know what, I think it's going to take another incident like we saw in the NFC Championship game last year. And even then, is it really going to change anything? I mean, Jesse, do you think that we're still going to see, I don't know, man. I feel like we could be talking about this again next year and the year after that. It's the same thing over and over again.
Well, I think that there's a difference between just having human error and making a mistake, and then, like somebody said, of making the same mistake on one type of call, whether it be that catch rule or that pass interference. If somebody missed an offensive holding and then, missed a face mask or something like that. But it seems to always be and I think the spotlight's on pass interference because what happened in the Saints-Rams game last year. But I just love whoever said that it's about one penalty this year. It's about pass interference, or it used to be about the catch, and it's about one call. And I'm unsure if we're going to get away from it because there are so many calls that they could choose to blunder every year.
And you know what? Maybe next year it's going to be illegal hands to the face or something like that.
The hands to the face thing, you hate it, and you can see in the replay he sees it. And it's so hard to fix something like that because the differing views, what they say they saw is not what you clearly see on video. And the part of it is they need to find a way so that when a human error like that exists, you have the ability to change it. So that we bring it back to...
That was Bakhtiari in terms of the illegal hands to the face on that specific call. He went right up to the ref and said this guy was doing it.
Yeah.
And then he jocked his head back just enough to make it look like he was doing it. So he played on the ref's ability to make a human error.
Yeah, so I think when it comes down to trying to fix the problem, you have to ask yourself, are you trying to fix the problem to make the game better now, or do you need an overhaul to fix the problem long term? And I think the Sky Judge, while it would be a great solution to our problem right now, I think in order for the Sky Judge to be truly effective, you need to look at the way the league is running. You need to fix. I think it comes down to three components when you want to fix things. You need to take a good long look at the rules. You need to have a concise overall view of the rules and how it should be enforced. That's another point. Enforcing the rules effectively on the field in the moment, and having the ability to correct those human errors in the moment when they miss those calls, or when they make the calls and they're incorrect, to have the ability to fix those problems, and that's where the Sky Judge comes in. And I think in order for any of that to change and get better, your third point is you need to look at your infrastructure. You need to figure out where is this going wrong? Where is it in our rules or in our enforcement that we can't fix human error because either Al Riveron can't get the refs on the same page, or who's running what, who interprets a rule a certain way. So I think you need to look at all three of those things and say you need to change all of those things in order so that you don't need to rely on a crazy fluke rule change where you need to you need to review pass interference in order to change it and get it right, because when it comes down to it, they aren't getting it right because everyone has a different view of what it is. They need to have the same view. They need to know what the rule is and be able to effectively enforce it and fix it if they get it wrong. And I think that's kind of the path you need to take if you're the NFL to fixing this problem.
And like we said, they actually do have a uniform view on the pass interference stuff now. It's don't change anything.
Is not change anything
Don't change
unless
it.
it's as egregious as the Nickel Roby-Coleman play.
So I guess now we've kind of outlined everything. I guess the only thing that's on my mind is what's it going to take for this kind of change to happen, and I keep circling back to the same thing. It's either going to take, it's going to take ultimately what it's ultimately going to be whenever it costs the NFL money, and that's going to be when people stop watching, or advertisers pull out or something like that. But I think it's ultimately going to start. Here's one thing that we haven't touched on yet. The fact that sports gambling is being legalized in many states around the country, I think that it's possible that once you start messing with states in terms of funds with states, and you could be messing with state money once you've got these once you have these casinos up and running with sports gambling. When you have important calls in games like this that could sway the outcome of bets, you could maybe have, for the first time, you could have outside influence from government on something like this in the league. I don't know, that's just me kind of brainstorming here. It's going to take either the fans stop, no longer watching, and that hurts the NFL's pockets where they're forced to change, or it's going to take the government doing something like they did with the concussion lawsuits back 10 plus years ago.
Which brings you back to the NFL wants to make these problems just go away. They do what they can to make these things go away so that they don't lose money out of their pockets. So I think that's another part of the problem is the money aspect of it. And you're right, with this legalized sports gambling, it raises a ton of questions on how do you handle that and yet not make it so things like this make the league look fixed, because I'm not going to sit here and tell you that this league is fixed. Mm-hmm. But if you're a Lions fan like I was at home last Monday, you can't help but think man, that really helped a lot of people that had money on the game, or a narrative that the NFL might be trying to push. I'm not going to tell you you're wrong for thinking that, this league has a problem with maybe pushing teams. And in that same week, you saw the Cowboys and Jets game.
What was it,
we
6
sat
penalties
here and
in a row?
watched 6 plays in a row where the Cowboys had the ability to get off the field and the Jets had the chance to win, whereas 6 penalties in a row, and it put the Cowboys one missed pass away from getting that game back.
Tied up, yeah.
If you're at home and you're like, well, you think this league is fixed, I'm not going to say it's fixed, but you have every right to feel that way, because
they're not doing anything to discourage that.
There's enough evidence, there's enough things going on around the league and in the league that would make someone be like, man, I don't know, that's questionable. You can't really deny them that thought process.
And the NFL does nothing to go against that. And then there's the whole Tom Brady stuff where he's talking to the official, and I'm sure we could all talk about that too.
Yeah,
it's just, if it's not one thing, it's another with this league, and I don't know.
And you just hate it for the fans because obviously we all love watching football. Otherwise, we wouldn't sit here and talk about it for however long on a podcast. But we just want to see things get right. We don't want to.
That is what it is at the end of the day.
We want to see the league get this right so that every one of us Lions fans, those Saints fans, Steelers fans, we can all turn on our TV on Sunday and have reasonable hope that our team has a shot to win a game or to win a Super Bowl or do this without the refs or the league stepping in and affecting that in a negative manner.
Because we've all three of our teams, it's been 6 weeks, and I'm sure every team by this point has had something. We can look at every team and say there was a call that maybe shouldn't have been made, a controversial call that has impacted the outcome of the game, whether it's the Saints in the week 2, the whole blowing the whistle with the loose ball. We've been talking about Will and I have been talking about that for a long time, whether it's the illegal hands to the face or whether it's that roughing the passer call with Ola Adeniyi in the Ravens game. It's so widespread, and it's so frustrating because it's nauseating because we see it's the same stuff every week, and we've talked about it. I think we've covered all our bases here. It's just at the end of the day, we're all frustrated.
Yeah, and really, we just, like Will said, we just want to be able to sit down and enjoy it on Sunday without having to worry, well, are the refs going to really screw over our team this week? Is this the week that we lose based on one bad call that really ended the game? That's all we want. The NFL is becoming not unwatchable, but it's just becoming really rough to watch because a lot of fans are going into Sundays thinking, like, well, how are the refs going to do it to us this week? I know Chargers fans feel like that. I know Lions fans definitely feel like that. I think Lions Will can attest to that. Lions have had it worse by far this season, in my opinion, out of any other team. I've seen but like John said, this happens to every team. This isn't just the Lions and Chargers. This is every team across every given Sunday, besides maybe the Patriots.
Yeah, except New England.
Yeah,
Packers.
And the Packers. Yeah. Oh man. So I hate to end on such a negative note, but is there any other final closing thoughts? Any final closing thoughts here before we kind of wrap this one up?
Have faith, fans. Have faith.
It can't get worse, can it?
It certainly absolutely can get worse.
I don't know if I
It 100% could
Don't
get
tempt
worse.
El Reverend. Don't tempt him.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's.
Ugh.
Don't lose faith because obviously there's an absolute ton of money in the NFL, and with the gambling thing coming out, like we mentioned, there's a lot more money going into sports in the NFL on its way as soon as these states start working on their legislation. So if you're someone at home who's frustrated with the refs or frustrated with your team, I don't want to sit here and tell you it's going to get better tomorrow, but don't quit.
But you're also telling me to rely on our government to do something.
Well, maybe not the government. You're not totally.
But then again, you're
not
talking
totally
about
powerless.
We're also talking about money, so I guess that's an entirely different conversation.
And if you don't like the way the NFL is being officiated, you're not going to get fined for saying something on
that's
Twitter.
True.
So just because your players can get fined for saying something doesn't stop you. So if you don't like it, if you agree, you disagree with something we said, say something. Speak out. Don't be quiet. Don't just sit on your couch and then change the channel to the NASCAR race or change it to whatever else you do on Sunday. Watch the NFL, talk about it, speak about it, because the more the fans make the noise, the less things get brushed away. The less so like us talking about this right now has helped to not let people forget the inequity of what happened last Monday, or the constant talk about the Saints game last year keeps it from disappearing into the quiet space of nothing.
We have a responsibility.
Yeah, just keep talking about it, keep watching, and keep hoping, I guess, is a start.
Yeah.
For us, anyway.
Yeah, I was going to say,
I know it's hard, especially if you're a random Lions fan listening. I know it's hard to not lose hope, especially after a disgusting game against the Vikings, but don't lose hope.
Alrighty.
Never lose hope.
Alrighty, and if Will's saying that, then we all have to keep hope too. So, we all set here, guys?
Sir?
Yep.
Yeah.
Alrighty then. Everyone listening, just wanted to thank you for tuning in to this special edition of the Stronger Than Steel podcast. I want to thank first and foremost my co-host Austin Davidson for being on board with this kind of episode. I had a lot of fun with this. And of course, I want to give a special thanks and shout out to my roommate Will and my friend Jesse for being able to make it to this roundtable discussion. We got to do this again sometime. Maybe we could do this around playoff time, and we can hopefully, in an ideal world, we'll be talking about all three of our teams, but I think it's most likely just going to be Jesse's team.
Yeah.
Man, how about it? The NFL's 100th season. It's very interesting that the league's 100th season, last year there were so few quarterback injuries, and this year we've got the 100th season, we've got so many quarterbacks going down. It's weird.
It's kind of incredible.
It's weird.
It's not ever, I wouldn't say it's never happened before, because it certainly has, but it's certainly happened to a lot of unprecedented quarterbacks.
Yes, indeed. But in any case, thank you very much to Will and Jesse for joining us. And again, we will have to do this again sometime, hopefully on a brighter topic. But in the meantime, if you have any questions about the show, feel free to email us at strongerthansteelpodcast@gmail.com. Check out our website, strongerthansteelnfl.blogspot.com. You can find our podcast episodes posted on YouTube and SoundCloud. Gentlemen, thanks again. Appreciate it. And everyone have a terrific night.
Good night.
Thank you.
You have been listening to Stronger Than Steel podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and don't forget to check out our website listed in the description below.